Hi everyone, it's Diane with SewBatik, and today the topic of our conversation is the classic shirt. I don't know about you, but I really love the style of just a simple, and the phrase is perfect, a classic shirt. Button down, collar, cuffs, throw it on over a camisole or a tank top, or just you're wearing a classic shirt, whether it be a boxy style or a fitted style. And I haven't sewn a detailed, constructed shirt like this for years. I've been really focusing on showcasing our Batik Rayon and our cotton jersey knit, which really, I haven't really done a lot of detailed specific collars and things like that with the garments that I've been sharing with you. And so this one I really think is special, and I've been wanting to do this for a while. The pattern that I'm going to share with you is the classic shirt by Liesl Co. And this is not new pattern at all, so many of you may have this in your collection of patterns. And whether or not you've sewn this or not, I'm going to share with you what I did. And it was really fun. I'm not done. I still have to do my buttonholes and my buttons, but I didn't have enough of the buttons to actually finish it, so I didn't want to start it without having everything ready to go. But I'm still going to go through this process with you so you can see my version of this classic shirt. Now, one of the things I also wanted to share is we produce, as you all know, batik fabric. And most of the time when I'm talking garments, I'm talking about our Batik Rayon, which is a very drapey fabric, or our Batik cotton jersey knit, which is what I'm wearing today. But we also have 100% cotton. And a lot of people buy our quilting cotton versus our garment fabrics, and we shouldn't categorize them. I probably do more of that than anybody, is put them into these categories. But a cotton fabric can be for garments as well, of course, we all know that. So you will see me making garments from our 115-inch wide fabric, and today I'm going to share with you our gradations, which are 45-inch wide, 100% cotton, and they are full of life and full of color. So I'm going to talk about our fabric first, and then I'm going to share with you this pattern so that you can take it upon yourself, hopefully, to sew your own garment and this classic shirt and have it ready for the summer and fall. Okay, a little bit about our fabric first and why I chose this. So our nuance gradation fabric, we have about 27 color combinations of this fabric, and again, it's 45 inches wide. And here are the various, well, I'm not going to go through these, but I want you to see that there are so many different color combinations of our gradations. Okay, and what is a gradation? You might ask yourself that question. And I would say most people, when they ask us if we have this fabric, refer to it as an ombre, as a fabric that changes color from light to dark across the width of the fabric. Let me show you, for example, our turquoise. Turquoise, here's a selvage edge over here, and it changes from intensity of color from light to dark, and that's 45-inch wide. Okay, we also have several color combinations where the fabric, and I'm going to find a specific one called hyacinth violet, the fabric changes between two colors. We have several of these as well. And this fabric then changes between like a berry, a very deep berry, to a very deep blue. I kind of think of hydrangeas when I think of this particular fabric. And all of our quilting friends use these fabrics in the quilts, traditional quilts, any position in a quilt, front, binding, backing, whatever it happens to be, or in landscape projects where you need a lot of color variation, also in various applique, anything like that. And you'll see a lot of those projects on our website as well. But this particular fabric here is what I used recently when I made a kimono. This, and I'm gonna bring this up a little bit here so you can see it. So this is a kimono jacket that I have shown many times out of our rayon and our jersey knit, but I made it out of cotton. And it is just something you can toss on. It has so much color. So you can see where I used the fabric and positioned the fabric from one selvage to another to showcase the different shades of fabric. And this is a nuance gradation. So now that you've seen that, I decided that I wanted to make a classic shirt using this collection of fabrics, and I picked the shade of Blue Nights. It is more, and I suppose it's subdued. I could have picked a blue or a red or a yellow, but I didn't. I'm not that bold. So I decided I would just try a subtle shade, and this is the Blue Nights. And it changes intensity from a very light, kind of a blue black. It's not a black. So when you put this against a black, you're not gonna see black, you're gonna see blue. And I think when you see it by itself, it reads gray. I used our gray thread on it when I was sewing, so that's how I kind of reference it. And here's the shirt. Now, there are so many things. First and foremost, I want you to take a look at our blog on our website. I do a little section called Inspiration, and in there I have detailed what I did and all the steps and all the different things that I did to make this garment. And the very first one is fabric choice. And I went into this thinking that I was going to position this fabric from light at the top to dark at the bottom. And after playing around with the different views, I decided, nope, I really wanted it to be dark on top and light at the bottom. And so that's what I did. I decided to turn it around and emphasize the shoulder positioning more than the hem. Play around with this, just, you know, everybody's different, and I probably will make another garment out of our cotton that the positioning of the dark might be on the hem. I do have a plan to make a dress traditionally needed for linen or cotton out of a gradation. Now that's going to restrict my length because it can only be 45 inches, but we'll see how that turns out too. But this is what I did for our classic shirt. So the top, I'm going to try to get this a little bit closer for you, but the shoulders itself are the darker portion, and then I matched my pockets going across so that it would look like it was a pocket on the front of the garment. I didn't want the pockets to stand out. I wanted them to blend. And then the sleeves as well go all the way around to the back, yoke, and down. The one thing that I did do also, a little pre-planning, was I decided to make the cuff. I like to turn up my cuffs sometimes, and so I decided that I would make the inside of the cuff darker so that it would add a little bit of accent from the shoulder down to the cuff and make a dark accent here. So I used that portion of the fabric to finish off the inside of the cuff. I really love this shirt so much. Okay. The pattern is, of course, the classic shirt, and it is by Liesl Co. The size range for this garment is a 0 to 20, and most of their garments for women's are a 0 to 20. And I'm going to reference some sizes here just to make sure that you know what they are and how they might work for yourself. This is a 0 is a 32.5 bust and a 35 hip. The waist I'm not going to measure because it's in between the two. A 20 is a 46 bust and a 48.5 hip. Let's talk a little bit about the finished garment measurement for this particular classic shirt. There is a lot of ease. So that's what I like about this shirt, is that there is a lot of ease. There's about 6 inches, 4 to 6 inches of ease, depending on the bust and the hip, and also the size. So a 0, the smallest size, has an ease of about 6 inches along the bust, which gives a very loose fitting, this is a very straight, boxy shirt. On the 20 side, the range and the ease is 6 to 7 inches at the bust and about the same at the hip. And so I ended up deciding, because of the level of ease, that I would stick with a straight 12. And that's what I cut out, and that's what I sewed, and it is really perfect. I could probably need a little bit more ease down here. I could have shaped it a little bit more or graded it out to be a 12 to a 14, but I didn't. And I wear a lot of my shirts open with a tank top or a camisole underneath them when I'm not just wearing a button-up. So it doesn't matter to me either way, and we all change a little bit all the time, so it will work just perfect for me. So that is the pattern. It is a difficulty level of, they say, a 3 out of 4, which would to me mean pretty difficult. And I didn't find it to be that difficult, simply because I approach patterns looking at each individual step. And can I do each individual step without relearning something? And yes, there's buttonholes. Yes, there's a collar. Yes, there's cuffs. Yes, there's a hem. I would say the difficulty level on here is simply, have you spent much time? And what you can ask yourself, have you ever made a collar? Have you ever added a structured collar to a garment? And I think that probably is what makes this a little bit more difficult. But the steps that are outlined in this project, in the pattern, or even grab a sewing book, because we all have sewing books, and just reference other techniques and how collars are added to a garment as an example. But that would be my indication of what the difficulty level would be. But other than that, there truly isn't anything difficult about this particular garment. And I approach everything that way myself, which is step by step by step. And probably the reason it took me several nights to finish this garment was that each step does take some time because you want it to be accurate. So let's talk a little bit about the tools that I used on this project. And besides your typical pins and clips and rotary cutter and iron and ironing board, basically I used and I left, this is going to look like an infomercial, and it's not what I'm intending. I left all my tools at home with this particular project. I don't have 2 sets of everything, and so this is what I used. But I use a fabric pencil by Bowen. I love the lead. It is precise, and it has an eraser. And so I did use this on all the markings of this garment. There are a lot. Every single pattern piece has a matching dot, so where the collar sits to the collar stand and then where it's positioned on the front. Same thing with the top of the pockets themselves. There's a line that you want to draw to make sure that your pocket is positioned where it needs to be so that they line up on both shirt fronts. The darts, of course, I did use a tracing pencil or a tracing wheel for the darts. I simply do that every single time. And since I'm working with cotton, I didn't worry so much about the pokies of the wheel itself. But that's what I did with that. But otherwise, fabric pencil. My most treasured turner, which is the point-to-point turner, and it has a point at the bottom and then it has a curved edge at the top. I'll show you a little bit about how I used this, but and that is a Clover product, by the way. But every time you have to turn fabric and create some form of a point, like the collar, the stand-up itself, and also your cuffs, we want to make sure that all of the fabric is curved nicely. And the curved edge, I found the curved edge of this turner to be a perfect tool. Instead of always using something that has just simply a point, that curve is just perfect for finishing off the insides and making sure that it's pressed out so that you can press it with your iron and top stitch it. The next notion I used actually took me by surprise. In the pattern, it describes gluing to make it easier to finish an opening and to top stitch it. So I rarely see that in a garment pattern. I have seen that in quilting before, where you want to maybe glue down a binding to hand stitch it easier, or to machine stitch it on top of the glued binding. I've seen that a lot and have done that, and it works beautifully. And most of the time it's Elmer's glue because it washes out. But I have used, in this project, the Bowen, it's like a crayon-y type glue stick, which gives you that precise edge of glue, and also a fusible web. This is two-sided fusible web, and often found to, you'll use this when you're making a binding, or if you're making well, anything that has to seal without a stitch, hems, and then you stitch on top of it. Well, what I used this for, inside your cuff, and we'll get to this just a little bit later too, but once you've added your sleeve to your garment, we have the sleeve opening with the placard ready to go, but we need to add the cuffs. And this is a cuff that has your outside and the inside facing. And you can't even see which was put on first or second. And that's the beauty of a really traditional sewing technique to put a cuff on. And inside here, on the inside, the whole entire cuff, or the inside of the cuff, is turned to the wrong side. And then we don't have the ability to seam it because it's inside, much like a pillow. When you're making a pillow, you have to leave an opening, and you have to leave that opening to turn it, to finish it, and then you top stitch it or hand sew it. This pattern called for putting some form of adhesive in here, of which I used the webbing, press it, and then top stitch it. And so that's what I did. And I've just never seen that in a garment pattern before. It's normally pinned, but I just think it's perfect because it made it so simple and so perfect. So if you don't have any of this, you can use pins, it's not a problem. But using the adhesive of some kind makes it a lot easier and a lot more stable, and it won't wiggle on you. And then you don't have to worry about the pins. Let's talk a little bit more in detail about the shirt. And I'm not going to go through each step-by-step process, but I want to share with you just some basics about the top so that you can understand whether or not you want to take the challenge of making your classic shirt. The two front portions of the top are just that, a simple front. And the placket is added, and again, just know that I haven't finished my buttonholes, but the placket is added to the shirt with interfacing. That adds to the stability of when you put in your buttons and your buttonholes, that everything is really stable. The next thing that you do is construct your dart. So we want to make sure that the dart is added. And again, just a simple dart. Make sure this pattern is a B or a C or a D dart. So measure yourself properly from your fullest to your top bust and take those measurements to your pattern to make sure that you're selecting the correct bust size, okay? The bust dart is actually underneath the pocket at its point. And so the pockets are constructed and added to the front of the garment before anything else is done. Then we put the back together, and the back of the garment has a yoke across the shoulders, and there are 2 pleats, one on each side. And I finished it with the 2 stitch lines, so I have really, really nice top stitching there along this back yoke, as well as once you sew the front to the back yoke, there's top stitching as well along that shoulder line. The next thing that we do is complete the collar. This particular collar is, and again, I made mine dark from the dark side of the fabric that I used, the cotton fabric. And so you're first adding your stand, okay, the shoulder or the neck collar stand with a traditional pointed collar on top of that stand. And remember earlier I mentioned using an adhesive and the webbing, the fusible web, to secure kind of an opening that needs to be sealed. I did this along the collar as well as the cuff, just to finish it off nicely. And there's top stitching options all over the place on this garment. I didn't do top stitching, the 2 layers of top stitching on the stand. I just did that on the tip of the actual collar itself. But traditional, trimming it down inside your collar to be 1/8 of an inch, turning it, and again, I used that point-to-point curve turner to do that, to create a very, very nice point. Half the time I don't think my points are so great, but once you have the garment constructed, they look beautiful with the top stitching. And so I'm really, really pleased with that. Then we add our sleeves. The next place that we need to do basting is our shoulder positioning. There is a little bit of gathering here, just a little, but it's necessary. And this pattern instructs you to put the sleeve on before sewing up your side seam and your sleeve opening. It's not an inset sleeve, which makes it a little bit easier. That's the kind I love. So that's a lot easier. And I think for me, my education on this particular garment was the cuff and adding a pleated placket to the side of the garment. I really like this look, and I'm probably going to add it to some of the other shirts I do eventually. But it is a really, really simple and nice technique. Again, take the time to follow it and do the top stitching and pressing as you go. Once your sleeve is attached and you've sewn up your side seam, that's when we add the cuff to our sleeve. And same thing, we're creating kind of a cap that has to then be sealed on the inside before we do our top stitching. And I might try to do a little bit of a tutorial on this portion, the cuff portion of it, later. But definitely, if you have concerns or questions or don't quite understand that portion of the pattern, this is probably the most confusing piece in this pattern because it's very hard. They did an amazing job illustrating how to pull the fabric away in order to get this placket on, or the cuff on. They did a good job of that, but it was a little bit confusing. So I might do a little bit of a tutorial just to show you how I did that as well. But I also used the darker, I think I mentioned this earlier, the darker shade of the gradation inside the cuff so that if I turn it, it really has kind of a fun look to it. The hem of the garment is your traditional shirt tail, curved, rounded at rounded sides, and then straight along the back, and comes straight to match on the front, but it does have a curve on the side. The instructions for the pattern are to sew your side seam and then use either a zigzag or your serger to serge and seal that edge. Then come down here, clip your seam, press it to the side so that you have a very flat join right here on your hem. And then I did a little bit of a decorative stitch on the outside to secure the piece, or the seam line, the side seam there. And I did turn my hem a 1/4 inch and then another 1/4 inch and top stitched, just to have everything sealed. I typically use a serger and then I fold it, press it, and then I just top stitch. But for this shirt, I wanted everything inside. And so I did take the extra step to fold it up a 1/4 inch, press it, and then fold it again a 1/4 inch and press it. I hope you agree that the classic shirt is really something that everybody should have in their closet and definitely something that all of you can construct and enjoy. I really love our little twist by using our nuance gradations, our 100% cotton nuance gradations on this particular shirt. And one thing I also wanted to share with you, and kind of curious actually to get your advice and some of your comments. We have for a while been sitting on some sample yardage of our Batik Rayon as a gradation. And so taking the concept of the cotton gradations and having it hand dyed onto our Batik Rayon. And I love it. We've tried many times trying to put the gradations on our wide 115-inch wide cotton, and that just didn't turn out right because it just has too much of a strange grade to it. But when we produced this as sample yardage on the rayon, it's very intriguing. And so I'd love to hear your comments on whether or not this would be something that you would love us to produce. I think we might anyway. But let us know what you think. And I can see this in a beautiful dress, a long jacket, and again, letting the design of the fabric really shine on a simple pattern. And hopefully we did that here with our classic shirt. And this could be really fun as well. So I'd love to hear what your thoughts are on that. So I hope this was fun, and I didn't get too techniquey. I just wanted to share with you what this shirt is all about, and that it is, anybody can make this, regardless of the difficulty level that it says on this pattern. You can definitely make this classic shirt and get the right tools and templates, and you're good to go. So until next time, have fun and share your makes.